Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. So I have come today for a discussion on the management of COVID-19 patients. This lecture is in continuation to our previous discussion on the Muse scoring that sir has already described. It's already put up. So today my discussion topic is basically what the pandemic is all about, the COVID-19. We are going to discuss the management and how to stratify every diagnosed patient or even a suspected patient into categories. So first we will discuss about a suspected case. SARS-CoV-2 to be considered in the following two categories of patients. Either if there is a contact history with a confirmed positive case in the last 2 weeks, or if there are symptoms, either respiratory symptoms alone are enough in the form of cough or shortness of breath, or any of the two constitutional symptoms in the form of fevers, chills or shaking, myalgias, headaches, and perhaps some GI disturbance as well. So, what has to be done once a patient with a suspected COVID infection has presented to you? First of all, you have to advise for a PCR, a reverse transcriptase PCR through a nasopharyngeal swab test. A CBC would be important, and special attention to the lymphocyte to neutrophil ratio should be given. And if the ratio is less than 3:1, then you predict a non-mild disease. And if indicated, if the patient is maybe presenting with shortness of breath or cough, you may advise chest x-ray also at this point. CRP would also be important. So these are the four basic investigations for a suspect case. Treatment plan to begin would be antipyretics, tablet paracetamol 500 milligram 6 to 8 hourly depending if he has fever. SOS also is possible. Antibiotic can be started at this point, azithromycin 500 milligram in an OD dose. Multivitamins including zinc 1 OD, and also calcium supplementation with vitamin D 1 OD as well. Two other medications that need to be started for a suspected COVID would be Loprine, aspirin 150 milligram in an OD dose, and also tablet Montelukast 20 milligram once daily on day 1, followed by 10 milligram twice a day for 7 days. A suspected case, when confirmed to have COVID-19 on the basis of his PCR test, he then needs to be categorized into mild, moderate, or severe so that appropriate management and risk stratification can be done. Investigations, once you have confirmation, in addition to the ones that I've already mentioned, would include checking the oxygen saturation at this point of this patient. And if initially you had not advised a chest x-ray, now would be the time to do it and check for any infiltrates. The first form of the disease can be mild. Three criteria need to be fulfilled for the disease to be labeled as mild. One, the oxygen saturation remains greater than or equal to 94% on room air. The chest x-ray that was done is normal and does not show any infiltration, and patient is hemodynamically stable. This patient needs to be moved to the isolation ward if we are admitting him. Treatment plan will remain the same as discussed. However, confirmation of COVID-19 infection would require the addition of the tablet ivermectin 12 milligram 12 hourly in 4 doses. We need to repeat his labs, mainly CBC and CRP, at 72 hours in follow-up of the previous labs to decide further management. So three important points. One, the medication needs to be adjusted. Two, the investigations will be repeated at 72-hour interval. Third, patient will be in isolation, and this is the mild category. I'm sharing a chest x-ray right now. So this basically shows that it is a normal chest x-ray as we would expect in a patient with mild disease, that no chest involvement is there. The lung fields are clear of any infiltration. Interpretation of chest x-ray is also very important. The lung field involvement is categorized into a percentage of the total. If the peripheral shadows are there, limited only to the scapular regions, we say that it's 25% involved. If there are peripheral shadows plus bibasilar shadowing as well, then we may label it as 50% of the lung field being involved. And any involvement in addition to the peripheral plus bibasal shadowing, maybe in the central area or in the hilar area, then we would label it as more than 50% of the chest involvement. And this interpretation of chest x-ray would be further important to stratify our patient. I will move on to the next category, which is the moderate disease. So the patient with the following two parameters will be categorized as having moderate COVID-19 infection. Oxygen saturation remains between 90 to 94% at room air, and chest x-ray showing infiltrates on less than 50% of the lung fields. As you can see in this patient, the top arrow on the right side shows an infiltrate, and one on the lower down on the left lower basal side shows another infiltrate. However, most of the lung you see is spared except for these two major infiltrates. So this perhaps would be a chest x-ray of a patient who would be categorized into the moderate category. Now, what is the plan for this patient who has now been categorized into moderate disease? First of all, where to put him? We need to admit this patient in the HDU. What laboratory investigations need to be done? So over here, there will be a change in plan. Initially, we were doing our labs 72 hourly. Now, I think we need to do a more frequent monitoring to sort of predict if the patient would worsen or is improving. CBC needs to be done daily. Again, the ratio between neutrophils and lymphocytes is important. CRP, D-dimers, serum ferritin and serum LDH can be done on alternate days to observe for an uptrend. Chest x-ray can also be done on alternate days. At this point, for a moderate disease, we do need to do his renal functions, we need to do his liver functions. If applicable, we may need to check IL-6 levels as well that seem to be increased or going in an uptrend pattern. If the patient remains febrile after 72 hours, we also would be sending blood cultures and sensitivity testing. Monitoring of this patient would be done 4 hourly, including checking his oxygen saturation and if requiring oxygen, then what level the patient is needing. Treatment plan obviously would include, first of all, oxygen inhalation via nasal cannula or face mask at 5 to 10 liters per minute. If saturation is not maintained, we can almost take up oxygen inhalation to 20 liters per minute. However, our respiratory rate should either be kept down to less than 30 per minute and our target oxygen saturation is more than 90%. Trying to tell that if the work of breathing is increasing, for the respiratory rate is increasing, that may not be a good sign and it should be taken as respiratory failure. And non-invasive positive pressure ventilation should be considered, BiPAP and CPAP, if patient is not maintained on high flow oxygen only. We have mentioned the role of ivermectin that should be completed if it was not given initially. At this point, we do need to add 3 more medications. A steroid in the form of Solumedrol injectable, 40 milligram OD, or if the patient is being treated at home or if injectables are not available, oral steroid can be given as well. If D-dimers are raised above 0.5 microgram per ml, then low molecular weight heparin in the form of injectable enoxaparin 40 milligrams subcutaneous once a day dosing should be started. If perhaps IL-6 levels were sent and they came out to be raised, then consideration of tocilizumab can be put forth, and we will be discussing tocilizumab as well. Prone positioning is very important. In fact, it has we've seen in our patients that it is really making a difference, and the prone positioning is also recommended for about 12 to 16 hours a day. It can be done in 4-hour sessions and just giving the patient some rest in the middle. Antibiotic in the form of a broad spectrum third generation cephalosporin, ceftriaxone 1 gram IV twice a day, 12 hourly. And depending on the patient's fluid requirement, a normal saline continuous infusion at the rate of 60 to 80 ml per hour can be given. Also, depending on the symptoms, a prokinetic and a PPI may be added to the entire regime. We have completed the management points of moderate disease. We now move on to categorizing our patient into a severe form of COVID-19 infection. The parameters involved would include a respiratory rate of more than 30 per minute, an oxygen saturation falling below 90% despite oxygen therapy, lung fields that show more than 50% of involvement in the form of infiltration, or if there is evidence of ARDS, and blood pressure if the patient is unable to maintain above 90-60 millimeters of mercury. Management of this patient would be obviously a little more careful and more stringent. We need to put this patient in the ICU. We need to attempt non-invasive positive pressure ventilation with CPAP. Start anticoagulation in a therapeutic dose over here. D-dimers provided more than 1 microgram per ml. So this is a chest x-ray of a patient with severe COVID-19 infection. As you see over here, there are hardly any normal lung tissue visible. It's all non-homogeneous opacity seen all over the lung fields. So this is definitely more than 50%. It is almost the entire lung field being involved. So that's the x-ray you would expect in a patient with severe disease. We would be sending blood cultures for this patient. His laboratory investigations would be done daily. Novel therapies in the form of remdesivir, tocilizumab or plasma administration would be a point of consideration at this point if not contraindicated. We will be discussing how to give it and what points to consider. I will be moving on to our fourth category of the disease, which is the critical disease. So critical disease would be any of the three manifestations, including an ARDS, where the onset of symptoms is within 1 week of a known clinical insult, for example pneumonia, or new or worsening respiratory symptoms, where the chest imaging in the form of X-ray or CT, bilateral opacities are seen that are not explained by volume overload, nodules, lobar, or lung collapse. Also, sir, I'd like to mention over here that when the chest X-ray is normal, however, the patient is deteriorating, at that point, even HRCT should be considered to pick out more minor details and to understand the disease further and to see if there is any presence of perhaps any infiltrates that are not picked up the X-ray. Origin of the pulmonary infiltrates seen on the imaging, the respiratory failure is not fully explained by cardiac failure or fluid overload, and patient rather needs maybe an objective assessment at that point as well, maybe an echocardiogram to see if there is history of any ischemic heart disease as well. Oxygenation impairment obviously would be classifying according to the level of ratio of the partial pressure of oxygen to the FiO2. That would be a different calculation, and then categorizing the ARDS into mild, moderate, or severe forms. Cytokine release syndrome is defined as any of the following in the presence of moderate, severe, or critical disease. Ferritin going above 1000 microgram per liter and rising in the last 24 hours. Ferritin already above 2000 microgram per liter in patient who is requiring high flow oxygenation or any form of ventilation. Lymphopenia either less than 800 cells in the absolute count, or the lymphocyte percentage less than 20%, or the neutrophil and to lymphocyte ratio of more than 5. So for lymphocytic study we have three parameters: the percentage less than 20%, the absolute count less than 800, or the ratio of neutrophil to lymphocyte more than 5. So other two criteria where we classify critical disease would include: one was ARDS, second is multi-organ dysfunction. Acute life-threatening organ dysfunction caused by a dysregulated host response to a suspected or proven viral or bacterial infection, and this could be in the form of altered mental state if the patient starts to become drowsy, if there is difficult or fast breathing, low oxygen saturation despite treatment, reduced urine output, fast heart rate, weak pulse, cold extremities or low blood pressure, skin mottling, and laboratory evidence of coagulopathy, thrombocytopenia, acidosis on ABGs, high lactate or hyperbilirubinemia, all direct towards a multi-organ involvement. As we had discussed in our previous lecture, we have already mentioned the importance of the vital monitoring, the importance of blood pressure, pulse, and here we see that if you see all of this deteriorating, the patient might be going into a multi-organ dysfunction. Septic shock is the third parameter that may signify patient in a critical disease. Persistent hypotension despite volume resuscitation, requiring vasopressors to maintain mean arterial pressure above 65 millimeters of mercury, and a serum lactate level over 2 millimoles per liter. As we speak, some of the investigations, most of the investigations we've already discussed. However, some we will have to order as and when needed. For example, ABGs are one of those, HRCT, also serum lactate levels, and other tests like LFTs and RFTs would be repeated and done as required. So that brings me to the discussion on tocilizumab. The inclusion criteria for tocilizumab is very important, and for every patient to be considered, it's important to sort of apply the inclusion criteria and also to apply the exclusion or the contraindications. So PCR should be positive of this patient. Prolonged severe hypoxic respiratory failure, as we discussed in the pulmonary fraction values. 72 hours of uptrending lab values. CRP to begin with either 100 or above 50 but doubled in the last 48 hours. LDH above 250. Serum ferritin above 500. D-dimers above 1 microgram per ml, and lymphopenia less than 0.6 into 10 raised power 9 per liter. Absence of any bacterial superinfection, as we are going to send blood cultures, there should be evidence of that. Absence of tuberculosis, absence of fungal infection, and the patient should have completed 24 hours of steroid therapy. So these are the criteria that would require us to be fulfilled for a patient to be started on tocilizumab. And contraindications are also important: active tuberculosis or herpes zoster infection, positive blood cultures signifying bacterial infection, If there is a GI perforation suspected, if the patient is a diagnosed case of multiple sclerosis, or on examination of the liver function test, there is an abnormal result, ALT being 5 times above normal or bilirubin above 2 milligram per deciliter. This will all negate the use of tocilizumab. Once you have crossed this stage and decided to administer it, dosage and administration is very important. The dose is weight based. Above 30 kg, 8 milligram per kg is given with a maximum dose of 800 milligram. Less than 30 kg, 12 milligram per kg, maximum of 800 milligram. Inflammatory markers in the form of CRP, ferritin, LDH would be repeated at 12 hours and then at 24 hours after dosing. The dose would be prepared in a microburette 100 ml with normal saline, completing the total volume of 100 ml to be administered over 60 minutes, and that would be flushed with a 15 ml normal saline over 10 to 15 minutes. We are going to avoid any bolus dose or stat push of the drug and of the normal saline later on. During infusion, what needs to be monitored? The patient's ECG, heart rate, respiratory rate, and his oxygen saturation. The decision to repeat dose that should be done within 24 hours would be dependent on two things. One, if there is persistent fever, low blood pressure, or respiratory failure despite giving the first dose, or if CRP does not drop 50%, or if it is greater than the baseline value before dosing. So that was the discussion on the tocilizumab. The second thing that comes into the novel therapies or advanced therapies includes administration of convalescent plasma. The inclusion criteria would include age more than 18 years, COVID positive patient, pulmonary infiltrates seen on chest X-ray, moderate stage requiring non-invasive ventilation or high flow nasal cannula or even mechanical ventilation, the pulmonary fraction being less than 200 signifying some form of ARDS, critical stage respiratory failure, septic shock, or multi-organ dysfunction. So perhaps between the discussion of plasma and tocilizumab, it's important that plasma may be considered for patients in moderate stage as well, going on to a severe form of the disease. Exclusion criteria is also important. If more than 10 days of COVID infection have passed, then plasma administration becomes a contraindication. Active bacterial infection, again blood cultures were important. Recent bleeding or high risk of bleeding should be another criteria that should be excluded. D-dimers above 5 milligram per liter, or if there is an evidence of thrombosis, known severe IgA deficiency and active fungal infection these are the exclusion criteria for convalescent plasma administration. The administration protocol rather is simple. Blood group should be matched with the donor after 14 to 21 days post-infection. PCR negative, IgM should be negative. IgG titer should be 1:160, greater than 1:160, and preferably greater than 1:320 dilution. Dose is about 400 ml once and can be repeated 1 week later depending on the patient's condition. At the same time, when plasma is being administered, patient's heart rate, patient's oxygen saturation, and vitals need to be monitored. Remdesivir was another drug that came into discussion for treatment of COVID-19. The indication of remdesivir remains moderate and severe COVID requiring oxygen therapy, regardless of if cytokine release syndrome is present. This can also be given in critical COVID. However, with the available data, it is unlikely to be of benefit in this patient population that has already developed a critical COVID infection. Dose is 200 milligram IV on day 1, followed by then 100 milligram IV daily on days 2 to 5. So it's a 5-day therapy. So regarding remdesivir also, 2 of the following need to be present to start treatment. Ferritin more than 700 microgram per ml and rising in the last 24 hours. LDH more than 300 international units and rising in the 24 hours. D-dimers above 1 microgram per ml and rising. CRP above 70 or again showing an uptrend in the absence of a confirmed bacterial infection. And if any of these 3 are present on admission, we do not need to document a rise, because if the level is already high, the patient is already in severe to critical disease. So that brings us to the end of discussion management wise and stratification wise. So a little note on discontinuation of the isolation. It's very important for everyone to know. There are no data regarding reinfection with SARS-CoV-2 after recovery from COVID-19 infection. Viral RNA shedding declines with resolution of symptoms and may continue for days to weeks. However, the detection of this RNA during convalescence does not indicate the presence of viable infectious virus. Isolation precautions can therefore be discontinued in the following conditions. In those who are symptomatic, the following symptom-based strategy is recommended: at least 10 days from the start of symptoms and at least 3 days after resolution of symptoms in the form of fever and respiratory symptoms. In those who are asymptomatic, a time-based strategy is recommended where 10 days from the date of the test when they tested positive, isolation can be discontinued. So perhaps I'd want you to maybe add a little bit over here that a lot of patients do go on having a persistent form of cough. So maybe fever should be, and fatigue and all those symptoms can be considered as the primary symptoms, and viral symptoms as well. In though a test to document cure is not required in the above mentioned patients. However, two consecutive negative PCR tests, a minimum of 1 day apart, are required to discontinue isolation in a specific group of patients, either if they are immunocompromised, those who are living in congregations such as jails, dorms, or madrasas, and if they plan to go back into that congregation, healthcare workers who might be dealing with immunocompromised patients, they would be putting them at risk. Test based isolation discontinuation may also be done on the discretion of the treating physician. So, sir, that brings us to the end of this discussion. I hope it was helpful. If there are any questions on discussion, we would be answering those. Thank you very much.